Like I said, I'm going to be talking about how to integrate pfSense with Cloudflare Zero Trust. I'm going to have to assume that you probably know at least something about both these products, and thus the reason you clicked on this video. But I'm going to go kind of through an overview of what each one of them will be doing as part of this solution. But together, they make a really robust solution for filtering out malware and bad content from getting on your network, and also providing edge protection to your network. So let's just dive right in and look at the overview, and then we'll go into how to configure each one of these. So let's talk about how this works. It's actually pretty straightforward. We're going to have our devices on our network, and then we're going to have pfSense as our firewall. And then we're going to have online on the internet side, we're going to have a DNS server, which we'll talk about that in a minute, a good web server that's pretty benign content, and then we're going to have a malicious server that has bad stuff on it. So typically the way the web works is, first you need to know where to connect to some kind of server online. And you do that with names. So google.com would be one such name. That's a domain name. So the first thing that a device does is it goes to its gateway, which in this case is also a firewall, and as pfSense, and it says, I need the IP address for google.com. pfSense says, I don't know what that is. So it goes out to the internet to its DNS server and asks, what is the IP address for google.com? So in this case, it connects up to Cloudflare, and Cloudflare says, here's the IP address for google.com. And then it goes back down the wire and just basically returns that IP address to the client. Then the client says, connect to this IP address to get the content. So then it opens up a new connection to the firewall with the IP address that it got from Cloudflare. And then pfSense then connects from that firewall to the server, and then of course sends the data from the server back down the wire to the client. And that's typically how most connections on the internet work. So the same thing happens whenever you have some kind of malware. So in this case, you would have a device that maybe has a phishing attempt on a email. So the user opens up their email client and says, oh, this looks interesting, and they click on a link in the email. And that email then opens up a browser, and then the browser does the exact same thing when you type in google.com. It says, here is a name. I want to know what the associated IP address for that is. So it goes out to pfSense. The pfSense then will connect to Cloudflare again and says, what is the name? What is the IP associated with this name? And then Cloudflare says, I know the IP for this particular name, but this name is associated with phishing attempts. You don't want to click it. So instead of returning the actual IP address for this malware server over here, it returns a different IP address back to pfSense, and then pfSense hands that off to the client. Then the client then will turn around and attempt to connect to this, but because Cloudflare gave it an IP address that won't allow it to connect, it's going to attempt to connect to pfSense, and then pfSense is actually going to connect to a server that says, hey, you don't want to click on this. This is phishing. This is going to put malware on your device. Could be ransomware, a virus, who knows, but you don't want to click on it. And so the client never actually gets to connect to this malware server over here. And so by doing DNS-based filtering, you can use this as a way to mitigate against a lot of different kinds of malware that all depend on name resolution. Now, it doesn't work in every case, because if a email attempt to extract phishing information from you does not have a name, it won't work if it's a hard-coded IP address. But the volatile nature of IP addresses is one thing that makes that kind of impractical for a hacker, because IP addresses change regularly, and so whatever IP address was previously associated with that name might change, and so that becomes very impractical, and it actually becomes a lot easier to track too. So in that case, name filtering is probably one of the best defenses that you can have against malware, and also against bad content like adult content that you don't want on your network or things like that. So I'm going to show you how to set this up with pfSense, and I'm going to show you how to set it up on Cloudflare so that you can use Cloudflare as your. So what we're going to do here is just log on to Cloudflare. So go to cloudflare.com and log in. If you don't have an account, sign up for one. They're free. You don't have to do anything. I'm using Cloudflare for a couple of things. I use it for basically an online proxy for my websites, provides some edge protection from, and also some caching services. So that's what I'm using it for here, but that's not the intent of today's conversation. We're going to be looking at the idea of zero trust right here. So we're going to use this particular option, and we're going to look at zero trust. Now, zero trust is a product that is used for filtering content and providing edge protection. You can use it on devices, And you can also use it for DNS filtering, which is under this gateway tab right here. This is the main one that we're going to be interested in right here. So we're going to be looking at two things under this. Now these other things do different things. We're not going to get into all that, but we're going to be looking at firewall policies and DNS location. So firewall policy is where we set up all of our filtering. And so this is pretty straightforward. I already have one defined, but if you don't, you won't see a list of them. You'll see, click add policy here, and you can add a policy. Give it a name, and I'm going to call mine block stuff, and give it a description. I want to block everything. Now there's three categories under the expression builder that we're going to look at now. So the first one that we're going to look at is applications level specific stuff. So we're going to click on applications and select in, and then this you can go through and you can pick applications that you don't want people using on your network. So most of these might seem benign, but they can also be used for malicious stuff. And if that's the case, you might want to block it. So one category that might be worth blocking, especially if you're filtering out stuff on like a network that has kids, probably want to block like dating sites or something like that. Sports is probably okay, but then if you want to block other things on here like social media, whatever, there's ways that you can do that. This one has games on here. You can block some of these games. Some of these games are it can be sketchy. Some aren't. Like Grand Theft Auto is not something I would want a kid playing. But if Minecraft might be okay though, so I could uncheck Minecraft or something like that. But you get the hint here that you can block a lot of different things. Some of them are more business oriented. Some of them are more entertainment oriented. You just have to kind of go through the list and figure out what you want to block and what you don't want to block. Now, as far as application goes, that's what you're going to be setting up here. Now, if you want to block malicious content in terms of bad stuff online that you don't want people looking at, this is the next one that we're going to look at, and that is content categories. Again, select the operator in, and this is where you can pick different content categories. So if you don't want adult themed stuff, that you block that. And then there's some other things in here that I'll just point out. Maybe gambling, if you don't want people gambling or anything like that. Some of these chat services can be kind of sketchy, like P2P, peer-to-peer stuff can be kind of sketchy. Some of the forums can be too, if you want to block that kind of stuff. I don't want weapons on my people looking at how to make bombs and stuff, I guess. And then questionable contents one. Some of this may or may not be benign, but I'm just going to hit it anyway. And then security risk, and then some of these things down here, I want to block, like some things that might be like softcore stuff and stuff that I don't really want on my for kids looking at on my network, for instance. And then down here you might have violence and some other things. So these categories, you have to go through them and figure out which ones you do or don't want. I'm going to go with these right here, maybe. And then down here we're going to click on another category, another org category, and we're going to look at security categories. And this is where you can block malware. So pretty much just check everything in this one. And there's nothing on, there's none of these I want on my network. Maybe the only one I might care about might be private addresses, private IP addresses, and that just depends on private IP addresses. That's not what I think it is. That's like IP addresses that are like ones that you'd find on local area networks. So block those. All these other ones are things that you probably do want to have blocked. So once you have apps, content categories, and security categories set, you just hit save, and you can save the policy. I'm going to cancel this since I've already made one, and I'm using mine for parental controls. If I go and edit mine, you'll see that I have a bunch of apps blocked, I have a bunch of content categories blocked, and of course all of the security categories blocked. Now, so once we have the firewall policy defined, we're going to go over here to DNS location. I already have a location here, but I hopped on another network so I can go through this process for you and show you how to set it up. So I'm going to go to add a new location, and I'm just going to give it a name, a network or something like that. Let's just give it a different name. And we're going to turn on IPv4 DNS endpoints. Now these are the endpoints that I'm going to be configuring in pfSense later on, but you don't have to get them now. We'll come back to this in a minute. Click continue. Now once I click continue, it's going to detect my external IP address, which is this IP address right here. I can't edit that from this menu or from this wizard. There's a way to change it though, and we'll look at that in a minute and how you can use a dynamic IP address with pfSense. But for now, just click continue, and then you click done. And once you have all this set up down here, click go to DNS locations, and then you'll see it one in your list. If you haven't added it already, you'll if you have more than one, you'll see two, like I have here. If you just added the first one, you'll see one. Now we're going to click over here and go to configure and go to this screen here, because we're going to need this screen in a minute when we configure pfSense. So leave this open for now. And now we're going. So the next thing you want to do is open up pfSense in a new tab. Now I'm going to be adding one specific interface for this setup, but you can add this to all of your interfaces or a single one. It's really up to you which interface you want to filter. If you only have a single local area network interface, then filter that one. If you have multiple ones like I do, then you can select one or all of them. You can just edit those. So the one I'm going to be working with is my kids network. And this is the one that I have set up for my kids' devices. And I have some schedules on this as well. So this is the one that I'm going to be working with. So currently it's enabled. And I have VLAN. So none of that's important. The main thing that we want to look at is under services, and that's going to be under the DHCP server. So I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to select this one right here, VLAN 300 for my kids. And this is where I'm going to put in the IP addresses for my policy. So if I come back over here to that tab that we were looking at, and I go to endpoint protection, you will see the IP addresses that I have right here, and I have DNS protection. You're going to see the IP addresses that I'm going to put into my pfSense box here. And so with these, just look at what those might be, and you can copy them, and then come over here to the settings, and you put one into one block, and then you put the other one into the other block like that, and then you simply hit save and save the setting, and then click apply. And then what that will do is every time the requests come in from my devices on my kids network, they will then go to pfSense, and then from pfSense they will go up to Cloudflare, and then Cloudflare will filter it based on all of my filter policies. Now, the trick to making this thing work, though, with a dynamic IP address is a little tricky, because pfSense doesn't have an open DNS client for Cloudflare Zero Trust, and Cloudflare Zero Trust doesn't have a way to dynamically update that information. As far as I know, they don't, but they do have an API, and the API allows you to update that IP address if it changes, and so you basically have to come up with some kind of solution for that. Well, fortunately, I did that, and so I'm going to share that with you now on how to set that up. So once you have the DNS configured for your network, you're pretty much set up here. But so to configure the script, we first need to get the script from GitHub. Now, this is a little script I wrote. Like I said, it's fairly straightforward. The script that we're going to be working with is ip-update.sh. This is not unique to pfSense. This should work with pretty much anything that can run a shell script and has curl installed on it. So it's using those two together to update this particular endpoint. So it's not a lot of code. It's like 43 lines of code with white space. So pretty straightforward here. It took me like 5 minutes to write this. We're going to be basically editing these 3 lines of code right here. So we're just going to grab this script here. Now, I don't copy and paste it. That's not going to work for you, especially if you're on Windows. You want to download the code, and you can do that by clicking download.zip right here, and that will download a zip file of basically these 2 files. And then open up the location, and then extract the folder and paste it into your downloads folder, wherever you extract things to, and then open that folder up and open up ip-update.sh. The reason why you want to do it this way is because if you copy and paste the code, it's going to change the line ending, and it's going to be Windows, and it's not going to work. So make sure it says Unix LF down here, because we want it to say that, because once we put this on Cloudflare, we connect this to Cloudflare and run it from a Linux context or Unix context, which pfSense is. It needs to be in a Unix format for it to work. So now let's edit the blocks that we're going to work with here. So this block of code, we're going to get our API token, account ID, and location ID from the browser. So like I said, have this screen open. So the location ID is not explicitly shown here, but it's actually in the URL. So if you go up here to the URL, you're going to have 2 IDs here. You're going to have this one and this one. The second one is your location ID. And so we're going to put that one right here. And the first one is your account ID. So we're going to put that one right here. So you should have a location ID and an account ID. And the next thing what we want to do is get an API token. So open up a new tab and go to Cloudflare. And if you go down to the bottom, you will have manage account, and then you'll have account API tokens right here. I currently have a few already. So once you have this, we're going to create a token. And it's got some templates here, but none of those templates are going to work. So we're going to click create custom template, and we're going to say zero trust. You can call this whatever you want. And permissions, we're going to have account level permissions, and then we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom to where it says zero trust. And then we're going to select edit. And so this can edit zero trust settings here. You can set an end date on it. If you don't set an end date, it will be an API token that you can then use forever. Then you can create token. I'm going to delete this token so you can't use it. But we're going to copy the token right there. And I'm not going to use this token for anything. And I then can save this. So let's go ahead and save this off and save the file with these credentials in it. And so there's a couple of things on pfSense that we need to do to get that script to run on pfSense. So the first thing we need to do is get the script to copy to pfSense. So we're going to go to advanced settings on pfSense, and then scroll down to where it has enable secure shell right here. It's probably disabled. You generally want to have it disabled. I had it enabled for testing, but enable it. And then SSH key only, you can select password or public key. Select password or public key, and then use port 22. And then that will enable SSH on your pfSense instance. Now, you want to disable this once we're done, but for now, we're going to use this to copy some files. So we're going to run two commands. We're going to use some shell commands from our host machine, and this works on any platform. It can be Windows, Mac OS, Linux, whatever you have. And I'm going to open up a new terminal window here. And so nothing about this is unique to our instance of Windows here. So I'm just going to change directories. So do that. Use CD, get into the directory where you have your script. So there's my script right there. And so I'm going to update that script and really just copy that script up to my instance of pfSense. So to do that, I'm going to first run a command to create the folder I'm going to target. So to do that, I'm just going to use the SSH command. It's going to look something like this. So I'm going to put these commands in the video description down below. So this is basically just using SSH. That's the default login for my pfSense box. And this is the IP of my pfSense box, and then this is the command I want to run. So once I run this, it's going to ask me to input the username, and I'll put the username in, rather the password for the admin, and then it's going to run that command on my pfSense box. Now, once I've run that command, that's just making a directory to target. I'm going to run another command to copy the script file, which is called SCP. So pretty much the same thing here. SCP is secure file copy, and this is the name of the script, which happens to be this right here. And then the same parameters that we had up here, we're going to use admin at 10.0.1.1, and then colon, and then the path to the IP address that we just created right there. And if we do that, I should be able to copy this up there, and it's going to copy the file to my pfSense box. So with those two commands, I've just copied the file up. I don't really need to do anything else with that. So now we can disable secure shell and save it. And that way we're not enabling that unless we absolutely need to. Now the next thing that we need to do is install a package so that we can manage the cron tabs in the pfSense. So on system, let's go to our package manager. And on package manager, you're going to go to available packages, and you're going to type in cron just like that. And you should see one right here. I've already installed it, so it's just called cron right there. If you type in cron, it should show up here in the list of available packages, but since I've already installed it, it's not showing up. Once you've installed it, you just install the package, and then you click apply, and then it will create a menu option for managing your crons under services. So then you click on services, and this is where we're going to configure a cron to run that script every however often you want to run it, 5 minutes, 1 minute, however you want to. So I've currently got mine configured to run every 5 minutes. So the command that we're going to run is something like this. So you want to configure the cron to be star, which means every minute, and then you do /5. So that would mean 5 minutes. If we wanted 10 minutes, you do 10 like that, or every 100 minutes, 100, or if you want to do 15 minutes or what have you. 5 is a pretty good number. It's up to you. If you only want to do it every hour, you just do star / 1, or rather 2 hours, because by default it's going to be every 1 hour. So this is basically saying I want it to run every 5 minutes for every hour, for every day, for every month of the year, for every day of the week. This is the user root, and this is the command I want to run. So we're going to be using sh, and then this is the path to that file that we just copied up. So /ip/ip-update.sh. And you need it to look like this. And then once you're done with it, you can save it, and you should have a record that looks like that in your cron tabs. And so what that's going to do is every 5 minutes, it's going to basically check to see if the IP address has changed. The only time this ever actually calls the Cloudflare API if it changes the IP, your IP address actually changes, because what it's doing is it's actually saving the previous attempt to a local text file, and so it's just checking the current IP address against the last time it checked, and if they are different, then it says, oh, you have a new IP address, and it lets the API know that you have updated your IP address. Otherwise, it never actually contacts Cloudflare. So you're not going to wear out Cloudflare's API. It's just basically going to be downloading a new IP address every so often. So that's pretty much it. So this video covered how to connect Zero Trust to pfSense and get those two working together. Now, the biggest hurdle for this was the location update. So in case my IP address changed on my network, I needed a way to dynamically update the IP address on Zero Trust on Cloudflare. And I originally wrote the script to run on Linux, but I said, maybe I can make this work on pfSense, and sure enough, it does. I kind of wrote it to be more generic. And you could certainly use it with any other Edge appliance if you want to use it for that. Maybe in the future, I'll go in and add it to the dynamic DNS options inside of pfSense. pfSense does have a dynamic DNS client, and it does allow for Cloudflare in that, but that's used to update a zone record, not to update the location for the DNS settings inside of Zero Trust. So it's a different part of Cloudflare. And I'm actually using that for my external access back into my network on Cloudflare, but that doesn't allow me to update that location piece. So that script will work for now, and maybe one day I'll add it. I don't know if I ever will, but maybe I will at some point. There's a couple other things that I didn't cover in this video, and that is some of the more complex setups for DNS in pfSense, because DNS in pfSense is varied. You could have bind 9 installed on pfSense and use it as a proper DNS server. It also supports DNS masquerading and DNS resolver out of the box. And so what that does is uses the pfSense IP address as the DNS server for all the clients on your network, rather than doing it like I did with the DHCP assignment. You would have to set some upstream forwarders for that to work for DNS masquerading and DNS resolver. So you basically set the DNS servers in pfSense to use the IP addresses from Cloudflare. And there's a lot of other ways you can configure that. There's no shortage of ways that you can configure DNS in pfSense. I kind of covered the most basic way in this particular video. And the other thing that you might want to consider is setting up some kind of firewall rules to prevent someone from just changing the IP address of their DNS settings on their local device and just kind of bypassing the one that was handed to them from DNS from the DHCP server. And you can do that by creating a firewall rule that basically blocks all port 53 traffic that's going out on port 53 to any other IP address other than the ones that you're getting from Cloudflare. So that's another thing that you might want to do as well. All these are things I didn't cover, but just some suggestions if you want to further investigate how to do this. So I hope this has been helpful, and I hope to be posting another video that I'm going to be probably doing shortly. It's kind of going to build on this idea, and that one's going to be talking about how to use pfSense to enact some kind of parental controls around the kinds of traffic that you might want to impose for kiddos that might be using the internet. And so this particular video actually kind of grew out of that when I kind of got into the weeds on how to configure Cloudflare and do all that kind of work with pfSense. And I was like, that would probably be a better standalone video, but I'm going to kind of revisit this topic and talk about this more in general and talk about some other features of pfSense that will allow you to have a little bit more control over your network.
If you like this content, please consider subscribing to the channel by clicking on the subscribe button. You can also like this content by clicking on the thumbs up or share this content with your friends, and also comment in the comment section down below. You can also find me online at www.blaze.net or on Twitter at @TheOneMule. And as always, thanks for watching.